Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews, coming to you from my bedroom this week, mixing it up a little bit, but this week we have a pretty stacked show, so 6 new shows we're going to review. I don't do more than 6 a week because I try to keep these shows under an hour, for Pete's sake, but the problem is, even though it's not a traditional fall schedule or season because of COVID, there's a lot of shows that have premiered anyway over the last couple of weeks. Some of them on streaming, but some of them on linear television as well. So we're going to tackle 6 of those. A couple of them that I wanted to get to this week, looks like they will be shuffled off to next week. But yeah, a lot of new shows popping up, even though broadcast networks won't be getting their fall schedules together until at least the end of October, I think, is the first one we know about. I'm going to tell you about that coming up in the news. But that's the other thing. We have a lot of news to talk about. So we usually start with the renewals and cancellations. But first, let's talk about the Emmy Awards, because, of course, this is TV's biggest night. It aired on Sunday, and it was a record-breaking Emmy Awards. Set a bunch of records, broke a bunch of records. Some of them good, some of them bad. The bad one, well, it was the lowest rated Emmy Awards ever. But, look, that makes a lot of sense. So many of the shows were more niche and more, streaming that were up for awards. And so, I think mainstream audiences probably didn't see a lot of the shows that were nominated. But there were a lot of good and cool records broken along the way as well. So let's get to the winners of the major categories. It's no secret, if you know anything about this year's Emmys thus far, Schitt's Creek just really ran away with the whole thing. This broke records because, first of all, it's one of only now 3 comedy shows in history where all the members of the main cast won acting awards. Golden Girls did it in the 80s. Will and Grace did it in maybe in the 90s a little bit, but mostly in the 2000s. And now we've got Schitt's Creek. But nobody has ever done it all in the same year. And that's what they've done. None of these people have ever won Emmys before for acting. Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara won writing Emmys back in the early 80s, way back when they were doing SCTV. But never have they won an acting Emmy. And so they each came away with one this year with Best Actor and Actress in a Comedy Series. It won Outstanding Comedy Series. And then as well for the supporting characters, we had, or supporting actors, I should say, and actresses. Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek, and then Annie Murphy won for supporting actress. And then they took home 7 total. They also won for Best Writing in a Comedy and Best Directing in a Comedy. So no comedy. I don't think any show, comedy or drama, has ever swept the Big 7 awards. I don't think comedy or drama, but certainly no comedy's ever done it. And they won 2 technical Emmys last week as well when they did the technical Emmys. And I don't know exactly what they even won for. It could have been like lighting or makeup or whatever. But point being, 9 Emmys in one season is more than any comedy series has ever won. So, congratulations to them. I got to get on that show. It's funny. I downloaded the first season of it like 5 years ago because I really love Catherine O'Hara. So I try to follow things that she's done. And then I totally forgot about it. I never ended up watching it. And then, whatever it was, 3 years ago, it became this huge buzzy show, I guess, because of Netflix. And so I really have to get on it because I've actually still not seen it. But now that it's wrapped up, sounds like time, for a nice binge. So over on the drama side, we had Succession winning for Best Drama Series. Limited series was Watchmen. Watchmen came away with a bunch of awards as well. I think 11 total. And they were the most nominated anyway, so no surprise there. And then Outstanding Variety Talk Series last week tonight with John Oliver. That was, I think, the 3rd year in a row that's won. Maybe even more than that, I forget. Jon Stewart and The Daily Show used to win it every year, but I don't think Trevor Noah's Daily Show has won it at all. I could be wrong on that, but I have some news about John Oliver coming up later, too. Outstanding reality competition program, RuPaul's Drag Race. Love to see that. Always loved RuPaul, so there you go. And then in the acting categories for dramas, we don't need to do the comedies. We already know Schitt's Creek. But Succession, again, for lead actor with Jeremy Strong. I don't know who that is, and I don't watch the show, so I got to check that out, I guess. And then lead actress in a drama series, here's another record breaker, Zendaya for Euphoria, and she is now the youngest ever lead actress in a drama series winner. And she's only 24, that Zendaya. I love her. And then for lead actor in a limited series or movie, it is Mark Ruffalo. I know this much is true. That was a powerful performance. I graded the first episode back when it first came on. I mean, there were some, good people up for that. Jeremy Irons for Watchmen was among them, but I think Mark Ruffalo did a great job there. And then lead actress in a limited series or movie, no surprise here, Regina King took that one. Although, tons of competition, Octavia Spencer, Kerry Washington, Cate Blanchett, but she took that one. So for supporting in dramas, it was Billy Crudup for The Morning Show, so that is Apple TV Plus's very first Emmy Award. And, he had some good competition as well, including his co-star Mark Duplass, but he's great on that show, so congratulations to him. And then supporting actress in a drama series went to Julia Garner for Ozark. Ozark, has had some awards success, but this year, I guess, not really their year. I think they only won 2 total. Supporting actor limited series was the dude in The Watchmen. I tried to pronounce his name last week, and not sure if I got it right or not, but Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. He played Cal Abar, or, spoilers, I guess, maybe, Dr. Manhattan. And then supporting actress for a limited series or movie was Uzu Aduba from Mrs. America. Of course, you might know her from Orange is the New Black as well. She's wonderful on both of those shows. Directing went to Schitt's Creek for comedy, Succession for drama, so there you go again. And Unorthodox was directing for limited series, which I did see the first episode of, but it was up against Little Fires Everywhere, Watchmen, so, could have been maybe some spoilers there. Writing for drama went to Succession as well. So I got to get on this Succession. It's winning all the awards. And then writing for a limited series was Watchmen, of course. So no surprise there. But all right, so another Emmys in the books, but a record-setting one, and some of them for really cool things. I know those were the main categories, but Norman Lear broke his own record for oldest Oscar winner. He is 98 now, and won an Oscar for the live in front of a studio audience thing for Good Times. And I have news about him, actually, with another project that has to do with Good Times. So we'll talk about that coming up in the news. So let's get to our renewals and cancellations. We usually start with those, but of course the Emmys are so big. A few renewals. Dr. Oz renewed for seasons 13 and 14. His audience has skyrocketed during the corona, at least, the first couple months, like March, April, May, when everybody was at home and wanting some, maybe medical advice or whatever, turns to Dr. Oz. I have my own thoughts about his show, but whatever. He seems like a nice dude, I guess. And then, speaking of John Oliver, so last week tonight renewed through 2023. So this is now, alongside Stephen Colbert, the furthest out contract. Everybody is contracted, usually, for another season. Bill Maher, I think, is the only one that is still up this year on HBO. But like Conan, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, like all of those are contracted through 2021 or 2022, but this will now take John Oliver 3 more seasons on HBO out to 2023. Raised by Wolves is already renewed for season 2 on HBO Max. That just premiered. We're going to be reviewing it later on today, so already season 2 in the chamber for that. And then some talk show on Showtime I'm not familiar with, but it's been on a couple of years. It was renewed for season 3, Desus and Mero on Showtime. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a late night talk show on the weekends. And then a couple of shows from DC Universe are moving universes to HBO Max. DC Universe is essentially getting out of the scripted, live action even, format, and really any sort of even non-scripted shows really, and moving towards a more of like a comic book platform kind of thing. Like you'll be able to, scan the history of DC Comics and different, things that have been up for whatever, Action Comics and Superman and Batman and all that kind of stuff. You'll be able to, I guess, go back through the history of those. But in terms of their shows, they're moving the ones that they're keeping going to HBO Max. They're all under the Warner Brothers umbrella, so it makes sense. But that's going to be Doom Patrol and Harley Quinn. Now, Doom Patrol I've not seen, but Harley Quinn I reviewed the first episode of. These are both renewed for season 3, which means that I guess they already did a season 2 of Harley Quinn, which I missed, I guess. But season 1, I reviewed that, fairly favorably when that came on. Kaylee Cuoco voices the Harley Quinn character there. So, a couple of renewals for you. All right, so canceled. United We Fall over at ABC. That's no surprise. That was kind of a last-minute thing that they tacked on to the summer to fill some programming anyway. I hated that show. I think I gave it a D. Horrible. And then Walking Dead, I think we talked about before, but they've announced sort of the plan for that. So it's ending with a 24-episode season over 2 years. Now, call me crazy. To me, that's 2 seasons. Because, for one thing, no show gets 24 episodes a season anymore. Like, the last time that happened really was... I mean, ABC was still doing it with some of their comedies up until a couple of years ago. Now they'll do 22, 23 episode seasons, but not in about 3 or 4 years have we had a 24 episode season. But in terms of a cable show, we haven't had a 24 episode season on cable, I don't know, maybe ever. We do get a lot of Grownish, I will say that. I think the one season of Grownish was 22 episodes on Freeform. But again, that's a half-hour comedy. Like, in terms of dramas, like 10, 12, 13 episodes, that's kind of the norm. So to me, 24 episodes stretched over 2 years, I'm sorry, but that's 2 seasons. I don't know why they're being weird about that, but all right. But they also announced a couple of spin-offs, too. So Daryl and Carol are getting a spin-off, and that's already been greenlit, so that is coming. I know who Daryl is, Norman Reedus. I don't know who Carol is. I don't watch the show, but and then there may also be a scripted anthology series in the works called Tales of the Walking Dead, and this has not been greenlit. It's still just in the works. The Daryl and Carol show is definitely coming, but this one, I don't know. It's going to involve the same universe, obviously, and some of the stories will be about characters we know, and some will be about brand new characters. So that's what I know about that. But the really interesting cancellation is Stumptown over on ABC. This was renewed a couple of months ago, and it was one of only a couple of, there were I think 3 total of freshman series over on ABC that got renewed. Stumptown, For Life, and Mixed-ish. Those all kind of made sense. But Stumptown has called it a day, and here's why. So basically, there's a few factors. I really looked into this because first of all, I liked the show, so I hated to see it go, but I was very confused about the whole thing. The creators say they're shopping it to other venues, but here's the thing. It's an ABC-owned product. It's from ABC Studios. At this point in the game, most networks are sticking within their own studio efforts for primetime shows. Back in the day, you had all these different companies farming out shows, and that's why on CBS All Access, for example, you'll see a lot of old NBC shows, because even though Paramount didn't own CBS at the time, or vice versa, or whatever, Viacom didn't own everything, Paramount produced Cheers, Paramount produced Frasier, and a bunch of shows like that, and you could see them all on CBS All Access instead of Peacock, because CBS owns the Paramount library, I guess. So, but and it still happens from time to time. Like, for example, Brooklyn Nine-Nine was on Fox, but it was actually always an NBC Studios show. So it made sense that once Fox canceled it, NBC brought it home to NBC. But ABC Studios owned Stumptown, so for them to start shopping it elsewhere almost is useless and makes no sense. They could maybe put it on one of their other platforms, because they do own Freeform, they own Disney Plus. That makes no sense that they would put it there, and they own Hulu. But even still, I mean, the ABC episodes were shown on Hulu, and if the case was that they were getting good ratings on Hulu and good views, then, you know, they would probably keep doing it on ABC. But so that's part one. Part two is that it is a very expensive show for them to produce because of all the action sequences and Colby Smolder's price tag. Michael Ealy probably has a decent price tag as well. So that was a factor. And then with the COVID stuff happening, you know, they're in production with a lot of their sitcoms, a couple of their, like, more contained dramas like Grey's Anatomy. Okay, almost every scene of that is in the hospital, and some of these other shows. You know, Stumptown is filming on location. They're, you know, doing all kinds of different you know, scenery and scene changes. The soonest I read, the soonest that they would have episodes ready is March or April. Now that seems kind of crazy, but who knows? With a show like that, I mean, and it kind of makes sense, because when you think about it, there's a reason that when COVID hit, Netflix, HBO, you know, a lot of these networks that make shows year-round had a ton of shows in the pipeline, because sometimes it takes 6 months to then edit them or whatever to be able to put them out. So for all of those reasons, it looks like Stumptown is pretty much dead after one season, which is very unfortunate. And the show For Life will be taking Stumptown's original slot for the fall. So For Life was already renewed, but they were going to have it, I guess, in January. So now that's been moved up to October. All right. So speaking of which, I guess we'll stick on the ABC thing. So they are the first of the four major networks to announce a new. Well, I mean, they've all kind of announced their lineups, but ABC actually set a date and said, this is our premiere night, and here's what we're doing. So the comedies on ABC are the first thing that are returning. We're going to see the dramas, I think, in November, like the very beginning of November, like Grey's Anatomy, Station 19, a couple of those, For Life. But their comedy lineup's going to return Wednesday, October 21st, and it's going to feature 2 episodes of The Goldbergs, because American Housewife will premiere the following week, so that will complete the 4 series lineup. But the first night it's going to be 2 episodes of The Goldbergs, The Connors, and Blackish. So this for me is a little frustrating, because that means The Connors has now moved to Wednesday. It is taking Modern Family's old slot, and I make Connors review videos for this YouTube channel. But I also do Masked Singer guest videos for this channel, and that airs Wednesday nights as well. So now, you know, I'm gonna have to do some extra legwork here and get both of my videos out within, you know, hopefully a few hours of the show's airing. So for me, not great, but you know, look, The Connors is their #1 comedy. So it makes sense it would replace Modern Family, which was their previous #1 comedy. So there you go. And then SNL, moving over to NBC. SNL has announced they are coming back with live episodes in October. I didn't realize, though, it would be so soon. It's actually going to be in a week and a half. October 3rd is the season premiere date for SNL. I don't know what it's going to look like. They have not announced a host yet or a musical guest. But the full cast is returning for the first time since 2007. Nobody's leaving. Some thought maybe Kate McKinnon was leaving because she has another show in the works. Kenan Thompson and Chris Redd have a show for NBC that will be airing in the mid-season in January. But they're both sticking around. And then they've also hired 3 new featured players, which is going to be Lauren Holt, Andrew Dismukes, who was a writer for the last 3 years on SNL, and then Punky Johnson. I don't even know whether that's a boy or a girl, but I love the name, Punky Johnson. So they will be on as well. And they have also announced that they have an official actor to play Joe Biden. Of course, you know, Donald Trump has been Alec Baldwin now for 4 years. and they're going to have another outsider come on in and do Biden. Last year they had Woody Harrelson did him when he hosted, and then he came back one other time to do it. They had John Mulaney do it when he hosted, and then they brought Jason Sudeikis back to do it because he was doing it very famously when Biden was the VP. But it's going to be Jim Carrey, which I think is interesting. I love Jim Carrey, and God knows he can really get himself into a character. So we'll see how that goes. But I have to say, back in the day, they looked to their actual cast to do these these people. Tina Fey coming back to do Sarah Palin, I think, really got the ball rolling to see, okay, well, what other possibilities can we have here? Maya Rudolph will return as Kamala Harris. She actually just got an Emmy for Best Guest Star in a comedy for the Kamala Harris role. Eddie Murphy actually won for SNL as well for his guest hosting gig this past season. But anyway, so she will return as Kamala Harris. Now that one to me does make perfect sense because she looks exactly like her, and she's got the impression down pat. It's to me almost as pitch perfect as Tina Fey doing Palin. So okay, fine. Jim Carrey. Look, I'm sure he'll do a great Biden, but is there nobody on the cast that can do a Biden? Like it just seems weird to me that they wouldn't want to. I guess it garners them ratings when they have famous faces on, but still. Okay, and then finally this week in reboots, we've got a couple this week. You Bet Your Life is returning. I was just talking about this on my Facebook yesterday. In fact, I have it right here. I've been watching this old DVD, You Bet Your Life. It's called The Lost Episodes. Shout Factory put it out, and it's a lot of fun. But Groucho Marx, of course, was the host for that. And then I think they did another iteration at some point. It might have been with Bill Cosby. I don't remember. Like maybe in the 80s. But Jay Leno is going to host this new version, and it's already been secured for 180 episodes. So it's going to be a Monday through Friday show on Fox affiliates mostly. So that will be interesting. And then Good Times. I was just talking about Norman Lear at the Emmys. Good Times is getting a reboot with an animated show over on Netflix. And Norman Lear, 98 years young, is going to produce that alongside Seth MacFarlane and Steph Curry. So it's a really interesting, unique mix of talents in there. Look, Seth MacFarlane, I don't really care for any of his animated stuff, but I think he's a funny dude as a person, and I love his show The Orville, so I think he'll bring an interesting perspective to, I think, the animated side of things. And then Steph Curry, obviously of the three of them, is the black person, so he can bring, Good Times was really known for its, down and out African American family and the life that they were leading. So I think he will bring, obviously, a unique perspective to that. But, of course, Norman Lear has history with the original show, so that makes sense as well. So, all right, without further ado, let's get to the reviews. Because, like I said, we've got 6 of them. And I wasn't even sure what order to do these in. Because there are some real big names here. Big names and big shows to talk about. But I think we're going to start with a show on Hulu called Woke. This one is getting a lot of buzz, and if you're a New Girl fan, it may be of particular interest to you because it's starring Lamorne Morris. He's, it's centered around him and his character. He was in, I think, pretty much every scene of the first 2 episodes that I saw. So there's 8 episodes, and they're all out now because it is on Hulu, so they're all out. And he plays Keith Knight, which he is the creator of Toast and Butter, which is a pretty mainstream, easygoing, jokey cartoon, and he's just about to get his big break going into syndication, and has always kind of prided himself on keeping things light with the comic, shying away from being controversial. But he's sort of starting to get some flack for that from some people in black culture, but the sort of lightning bolt point for him happens in the first episode when he gets racially profiled by the police. as this, mugger dude, which of course he's innocent, but the police don't know that. So he experiences, firsthand this sort of, racial bias and all of that. So he kind of destroys his chances at taking this comic strip mainstream because by the end of the first episode, they have the sort of, Q&A with the public and press conference and all that, and he just goes off about, the black man's experience, and, this is not what I want to be doing, this, toast and butter thing and whatever. So it's a lot sort of stemming from that. That was mostly in the first episode, and a couple other things happened as well. But speaking of SNL, you have in the cast Sashir Zameda, who was on SNL for a few years. Very funny gal. She plays a reporter for the Bay Arian magazine or online presence or whatever, who is basically, pushing Keith and calling him out for being too white and too, mainstream. Even when he says things like, oh, I like to keep it light, she gives him a look like, oh, okay, keep it light. And then he also has a couple of wacky roommates. Blake Anderson from The Workaholics is on there, as well as T. Murph, who plays his black roommate. So he has one white, one black. His name is Clovis. And then there's the girlfriend as well, played by Rose McIver. I'm not sure where that one's going because she is an artist in her own right, and they have kind of a falling out after he does his little stunt there at the press conference. So that's what basically is going on here. But the interesting thing here about this that makes it a little more left of center is that Keith has these visions of the cartoons talking to him. Sometimes it's his own cartoons, sometimes it's a mailbox that turns into a cartoon. And we've got some real interesting voices for that too. We've got J.B. Smoove, Tony Hale, Jack McBrayer, Cedric. So, it sort of runs the gamut there as well. I think this show has a lot of potential. I don't think it's quite there yet in these first two episodes. But I think Lamorne Morris has a really good presence. I think he always has. And what's funny is, like, New Girl's, basically Friends or, How I Met Your Mother. I mean, those are both very white shows, and New Girl was a very mainstream buddy show, So, I've always sort of thought of Lamorne Morris as, I don't know, not controversial or, whatever. And so I think he's the perfect choice for this character. It can definitely be funny, but I'm not sure it's picked a lane yet. It wants to be woke, and you'd think maybe a show called that would have even more of a slant to it. But even in the stuff that's going on, like with his outrage at the press conference, and they were calling it like a meltdown and stuff, it's I don't know, it's sort of still a little bit, I don't want to say light because that's too on the nose from what we've been talking about, but I'm just not sure it has picked a firm lane in where to go. The girlfriend storyline goes nowhere for me. I find that to be very boring. And then his roommates, I don't know. I can kind of take or leave Blake Anderson. Of all the people from Workaholics, he's like probably my least favorite, Adam Devine obviously being my favorite. But, they seem to be a little caricature right now. But I do see the potential in this show for sure. But I think it really lies between his character and Sashir Zameda's, because that to me is, and maybe I'm foreshadowing here. I didn't see the other 6 episodes of the season. Maybe the girlfriend goes bye-bye and he does end up getting with her. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's no chemistry between him and the girlfriend. I would love to see that storyline die out. But again, I do see some potential here. And I laughed, and I think Lamorne Morris is perfect for the role. So I'm going to leave Woke with a B. Seeing the other 6 episodes, I don't know. It could go up from there, as they all can. So up next, we're going to talk about Raised by Wolves. I mentioned in the news that this was already renewed for season 2. So this is on HBO Max now, and HBO Max is doing the old Apple TV Plus thing where they release 3 episodes at once, and then once a week after that. So all the episodes have not been up yet. I think there's still 3 more to go. There is 8 total for the season, and it will go through... Oh, okay. So this coming week is the last one. So did they release more than 3 at once? No, okay. Oh, they released... Okay, so they actually are releasing 2 a week, except for the last one. Unless maybe they're... Okay, maybe there's 10 episodes. All right, well, this Wikipedia article is confusing. But they released 3 at once, and then 2 the following week, 2 the following week. So that's how it's wrapping up so early. But it looks like the final episode will be next week. But anyway, this is a Ridley Scott production. He didn't create it, but he is one of the executive producers, and he directed the first 2 episodes. So it's got a great pedigree there. He's obviously known for his science fiction material. But the main plot here is there are 2 androids, father and mother. That's all that we know them as. And they are tasked with raising human children on this new planet called Kepler 22b, because the Earth has been destroyed by war. And, the humans are sort of having religious issues. They're being raised by the androids as atheists, which makes sense. And they sort of learn that trying to control humans can be tricky. So I just watched the first episode for this. This takes place, by the way, in the 22nd century. So, a little bit of a ways away, but 12 years after the new civilization begins, one child is the only survivor, and so that's who they're raising. So, look, if you know and love Ridley Scott, you know that usually, like, the visual component of his stuff is the most striking. And we see that again here with Raised by Wolves. Certainly, like when you think about Blade Runner or even something like The Martian. Look, The Martian was a great story, and I love the movie. It was in my top 25 of the decade. Matt Damon's fantastic. But, I don't think you'd have that movie without the striking visuals. It wouldn't be quite as good. So here, maybe is it too much style over substance? I don't know. One interesting thing is, because the 2 lead characters are androids, it's really hard to kind of get a read on how we're supposed to feel about them. And that can be done. I mean, we've seen it time and time again in different robots. I mean, who doesn't fall in love with R2-D2 immediately, or Rosie from the Jetsons, and, but I'm also naming more kid-oriented properties and robots. This is a very adult sci-fi show. I'm not saying kids wouldn't enjoy it. I think if they're sci-fi heavy kids, they would. However, it's definitely more Blade Runner than it is, I don't know, Lost in Space or something a little more childlike. But it reminds me of a lot of recent sci-fi properties. It reminds me a little bit of Annihilation, which was a really crazy movie. It reminded me a little bit of Blade Runner 2049. That's, I guess, more the Ridley Scott connection than anything, maybe. But one thing about these movies is that they're think pieces. Ex Machina is the same. I mean, that is not your standard sci-fi movie. None of the ones I mentioned are. And this has that same vibe and that same feeling to it. But the question is, are any of these characters likable? And I'm not sure yet that they are. After a full hour, I still don't quite know how I feel about anybody. I do think that the whole, new universe thing, look, I mean, there's obviously tropes that sci-fi has been mining for decades and decades, and some of them include a brand new world. Earth is destroyed, da 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 da. So what are you saying necessarily that's new? And I think this is a new take on it. Having two androids raise a human child and be basically the last human child, and they go through trying to build a community around that and build up the population and this and that. It held my interest. I mean, the hour, well, I think it's like 50 minutes flew by like that. I mean, it was very quickly paced. But again, I'm not sure if anybody's likable, either the humans or the androids. But one thing's for certain: it is a visually very, very, very striking, as expected from Ridley Scott and Sci-Fi. When you combine those two together, you're gonna get some interesting things to look at. There's no doubt. So I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to leave it with a B. I almost went B plus. I wish I had any sort of connection to any of the characters after an hour. But I think the whole religion thing is interesting. Obviously they would be raised as atheists because they're robots. They have no belief system or whatever in God or a higher power. So I think that's an interesting thing to approach. But I definitely want to see where it goes. Visually, great. The acting's okay. I mean, nothing to write home about. But I think a B is fine for at least the first episode of Raised by Wolves. So let's move over to Netflix for 3 shows, and let's start with a sci-fi one, which has been atop Netflix's TV show list for about a week and a half now since it premiered, and that is Away. This is starring Hilary Swank, who, by the way, I just love. She pops up in things every so often. She was most recently in The Hunt, I guess. She was good in that. But her husband is one of my favorites as well, Josh Charles. I go back to like Threesome with him from the 90s. I know Dead Poet Society was before that, but I saw that after Threesome. So for me, Threesome, and then Sports Night on ABC. I used to love that show from Aaron Sorkin. I was thinking Z because Ed Zwick is one of the executive producers of this show, and you know him from a lot of things. I mean, he dates back to the 80s as well with 30-something and the movie About Last Night, and so he's been around as well. And one of the other producers, Jason Katims, who brought Friday Night Lights to television. He brought Parenthood to television, so I really like him as well. So great pedigree for this show, but what is it about? So Hilary Swank plays the leader of this mission to Mars that not only NASA is a part of, but it is a worldwide mission. There's a chemist from China. There's a botanist from Britain. Speaking of Matt Damon in The Martian, there's a cosmonaut from Russia who has a lot of experience in space. There's a medical officer from India, and then another American named Emma Green. So it's a multiracial, multicultural type of excursion that they're going to go on to try and see what's going on with Mars. And she plays Emma Green. She plays the one American of the 5. And her husband, Josh Charles, who plays Matt, he is a NASA engineer who had his own sort of, space history, but for a recent medical condition, he is not able to go on the mission, so they gave her the reins there. And they also have a daughter who is having some mixed emotions about her mom leaving, and she's played by Talitha Bateman, who I am unfamiliar with, but she's done things I've seen. I mean, she was in Love, Simon. She was in that horrible movie Geostorm. She was one of the kids in Annabelle Creation. So I mean, I've seen all of those things, but I still didn't really recognize her, to be completely honest. And I've seen Love, Simon like 3 or 4 times, so she must have pretty minor roles in these things. But anyway, this is another one that I think I could see the potential here. I'm not quite positive it's there in the first episode. I'm getting a lot of this week, and I don't know. In keeping with the theme, Away is no different than the other 2 I've already reviewed in that respect. But what this does have going for it is, look, Ridley Scott has the visuals, that's fine, but Jason Katims and Ed Zwick know how to tell stories. And so here we know all the characters, pretty well after the first hour, which is much more than I can say for the Raised by Wolves show. I think the acting here, look, it's going to be top notch with Hilary Swank and Josh Charles. I don't really know a lot of the other characters. I've maybe seen a couple of them here or there, but it's mostly, well, I can't say it's mostly about the family because it's not. I think it's a two-hander. I mean, I think there's a lot of family stuff, but I think it's just as equally about her relationship with the astronauts that are on the mission with her. In this first episode, her husband, suffers a stroke and has an episode with that. So she's sort of questioning, okay, well, do I abandon the mission here? We haven't left yet. Do I step down? But right before us, the audience, sees what's going on, there was an incident that happened on the ship that does get explained, but it allows a couple of people on the crew to be against her and not want her to be on the mission anyway. So there's some tension in the ranks there. Look, the main negative, I guess I should say, about it is that I would like to not see this turn into too soapy of a show. I don't want it to be like, This Is Us, but also there's a space component kind of thing. And look, Parenthood was very, very heavily dramatic. Jason Katims is great at that, so was Friday Night Lights. But I really would like to not have it go that way. I like this balance that they're striking in the first episode, splitting between the home life and her family and the people on the mission. And not only that, but the people at NASA as well, which of course her husband is a part of both. He's a part of the family and a part of the NASA team. So I think that's all very interesting, but I was definitely very into this show. I like the first episode a lot. I think there's 8 total. Netflix, of course, always puts them all up, so you can binge it right now if you want to. There's 10 total episodes. And this is apparently inspired by an article in Esquire. So I don't know if that article was based on real things or not, or what part of it is based on the article. But apparently there's some sort of truth to this, maybe. But no, I really thought this was a well done, at least first episode. I'm excited to see where it goes. Hilary Swank, I think she's an underrated actress. She's been in a lot of really great things, and I don't think she quite gets her due. I think she's probably going to go down in history as the woman that everyone on The Office debated, whether she was hot or not in that one episode of The Office. I think that's probably going to be her legacy, unfortunately, but, I think there's a lot of good here. I'm going to leave away with an A-. So up next, we've got Julie and the Phantoms. This is on Netflix as well. This is a half-hour comedy show. Well, it's sort of. It's sort of a comedy. No, it's a comedy. It's a musical. It's a little bit science fiction, and it's a bit drama as well. It's a little mix of everything. And basically, the premise here is this gal, Julie, who is played by Madison Reyes, who is kind of local. She grew up only about an hour from here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, so a little bit of a local gal. Cool. But this is really her first major acting gig, and basically we see that she's lost her mom. That happened before we joined in progress, but she is part of the music program at school and decides to not really go out for it. She's done with it. She's going to give up on music. That was something that her mom loved, and it's a little too personal, for her. However, she discovers these 3 ghosts that are sort of taking up residence in the garage of her house. They don't realize that they're ghosts, but her basically unearthing some stuff of her mother's brings them to life. In the very, very first scene of the show, we see them playing a gig in 1995, and then they eat some hot dogs off of somebody's car engine. So obviously they die. That's sort of like a recurring joke in the show. And then they appear 25 years later, not even knowing that they died in sort of like Beetlejuice fashion, like the Maitlands in Beetlejuice, if you remember that. But anyway, so they're played by Charlie Gillespie, Owen Patrick Joyner, and Jeremy Shada. I don't know any of these people, but they're all really good. Like, they're all really good. So basically, she can see them and hear them, and everyone else can see them and hear them too, if she and them are all playing their music and singing and all of that. If she just does it by herself and they're just there, nobody can see them. But if they pick up their instruments and start rocking out with her, then people can see her. So it's a little bit of a sci-fi thing as well, but this is certainly geared for kids. I mean, this is a very, very, very PG-rated show, even though there's some death involved. And the executive producer of this is Kenny Ortega. If you are familiar with that name, well, he did the High School Musical movies. He did the Michael Jackson documentary, This Is It, about the concert performance right before he died. And he actually did a lot of choreography for the John Hughes movies in the 80s. So Kenny Ortega goes back a long way with music, with comedy, and that sort of thing. So this is basically like a Disney Channel show, but on Netflix. It doesn't have the laugh track that Disney Channel has, but because I guess he was part of the High School Musical thing, it is very, very much in that same vein. It's a little bit hokey, a little bit corny, and a little bit like maybe like risque is the wrong word, but like it sort of flirts with like being daring and saying things that maybe a parent would get that a kid wouldn't get. But it's not like these nasty like double entendres or anything. It's just sort of things that are a little bit of a wink to parents, but the kids won't really get. But much like those Disney Channel shows, it's got some sexy leads. I mean, not the girl, she's literally like 16, but the dudes in the band are all like in their 20s, and for me, like, they're eye candy. They have their shirts off sometimes. And I know that Disney Channel purposely puts hot 18, 19, 20-year-old girls on their shows. It's where Ariana Grande came from, it's where Demi Lovato came from, whatever, so that, the dads of their teen girls have something to watch for as well. But whether that's a part of why this is a good show, I don't think it is. I don't think it really matters at all. What is great about this show is the chemistry between the three leads. I mean, they all really seem like they're buddies in a band. And this Madison Reyes is really talented as well. So at the end of the first episode, she sings a song that supposedly her mother wrote, whatever. So it's like an original number. And it was very good, and I was like, man, her lip syncing was right on point. Yeah, it's because it is her voice. I mean, she is lip syncing, obviously, it's a TV show, but it is her voice. And the guys, they're playing the instruments, I guess, and singing, and so Kenny Ortega got them all together after deciding who was going to be in the show, and had them straight up like rehearse and do a couple of gigs around California. Just, nobody knew who they were. They just, hey, here's a concert, it was probably free, whatever. But to get out there and have some sort of concert experience. So that combined with the music is really good. Like, I watched 2 episodes of this. I always try to watch a full hour. So if it's a half-hour show, I try to watch 2 episodes. And so I watched 2 of this, and the music in the second episode is just as good as the first, maybe even more so. There's a song at the end that's very catchy. This was a great show. I was really, really happy with this. Netflix has been knocking it out lately with the kids and family type stuff. Babysitter's Club was fantastic. And I think both of these shows, Babysitter's Club and Julie and the Phantoms, I think the names connotate this is, a more girly show. I don't think that's the case, really, with either of these shows. I mean, Babysitter's Club, I think, maybe a little more, but I think, families and even, like, teenage boys, I think, would have liked Babysitter's Club. Julie and the Phantoms, I think, probably skews a little younger than, like, teenage boys and girls. I think this is for tweens, for sure. I think the target age range for this show is going to be, like, maybe 9 to 12 or 13. But I think parents are going to love it as well because, A, it's wholesome, B, it's pretty funny, and C, the songs are great. The only negative I really have is that it is rather corny in the Disney Channel type way. But I like a lot of the Disney Channel shows, so that's not a slight. But it's not going to be really highbrow humor, But I leave Julie and the Phantoms with an A- as well. Very, very good show. So up next we have The Duchess. This is on Netflix as well, but it comes. Well, I don't know if it's from English TV or not. I don't know if it was on BBC or something, but it's from Catherine Ryan, who is a Brit by way of Canada, I guess, or maybe she's a Canadian by way of England. I forget. Either way, she created it. She writes the show. She wrote all 6 episodes, and I'm like a little bit familiar with her stuff. Like, she's done a lot of things on TV here in the States, just sort of guest roles and stuff, or stand-up stuff that I've seen. So I'm a little familiar with her, but basically she's like an Eliza Schlesinger or like a Nikki Glaser. Like, she's a bawdy female comedian who goes the distance for a joke and that kind of thing. And so basically the premise here is she is this single mom because she's divorced from this deadbeat husband, or, well, I don't know if they were ever married, but he's the baby daddy anyway of their daughter Olive, and he's a former boy band member, which they keep going back to as sort of a joke, but he's a deadbeat. He shows up, but he's a loser, really, and she's kind of just making her way in the world by kind of being an a-hole to everybody that she needs to protect her daughter. Like, there's this little bully, so she goes and basically harasses the mom and tries to get the mom in trouble with the principal and that kind of thing, but all while having a very foul mouth. And so Catherine Ryan is, Catherine is the character too. And then the daughter is played by Katie Byrne, who's a newcomer. I didn't recognize anybody else in the show, to be honest. They're all, I guess, British actors and actresses, but this is a real mixed bag for me. It really is, because I think it tries way too hard in the same way that, like, certain Melissa McCarthy R-rated comedies try too hard. Like, there's that line where it's like, okay, this is genuinely funny, and then there's the part where it's like, all right, well, now you're just saying things to be shocking, and you're throwing a lot of curses out there, and you're talking about your genitals, and but none of it's necessarily cohesive or jokes. It's just like rapid fire Tourette's almost, and look, some of those Melissa McCarthy movies I think are very funny, and some I think, like Tammy, I think just tries way too hard, and I felt, look, every generation has a couple of them. I feel that way about a lot of Will Ferrell movies. His aren't as dirty because they're mostly PG-13, because I think he wants to appeal more to families. But he's got his R-rated ones as well, of course, like Step Brothers. But I got that sort of vibe from this. And look, it works great at a roast, for example. Like, I love Nikki Glaser. I will watch her roast footage on YouTube all the time. Very funny and very, she works blue, and she has a lot of good raw jokes. Here, there's some of that. There's definitely some of that, don't get me wrong. But it just reeks of trying too hard. And it was a turnoff. Also, I'm not sure how I feel about the character herself. Like, Catherine as a character, I like that she stands up for her daughter, but God, she just seems so unlikable. And you can kind of see why it didn't work out with the ex. Even though he's kind of a deadbeat, I don't know, he seems like a slightly nicer person, and I don't know, and that's a line too, I think. Like, there's definitely a line between, and Melissa McCarthy straddles it often, actually, between just being, looking out for your family and doing whatever it takes, and just being an outright D-bag. And I think Catherine Ryan is a little bit over on the D-bag side of things. But I definitely laughed. Not all the time. I would say about 50% of the jokes landed at least somewhere where they wanted it to, and then the other 50% of the jokes are like, you're trying way too hard. Like there was, like in the second episode, there was a gag where she brought she brought tea from her house, and she was drinking it as she was walking all up to school, and the catty moms reminded me a little bit of the movie Bad Moms. The catty moms, were like, oh, you brought tea from home, like, oh, you're too good for Starbucks, or whatever, and she was just like, what are you talking about? Yeah, like, how crazy that I brought this from home. And it was like, that was like a funny exchange between the characters, because it didn't seem forced, and there was, there's some potty humor in it, but, like in the very first scene, she's wearing a shirt that says, I don't like to curse, but it says pussy on it. It says like world's smallest pussy or something like that. And it's just like, to me, that is trying way too hard. Like for the first scene to have her wearing that shirt while walking her daughter to school, we get it. You're edgy, But I kind of liked it enough. Like I'm gonna recommend it, but only slightly. I'm gonna give the Duchess a C+. I think it's right on that line there. So finally, we end with the Drew Barrymore show. Every so often, I review game shows, talk shows, whatever. And we did it with the Kelly Clarkson show about a year ago on my very, very first TV news and reviews, which is, I did it sometime in September. It might have been the first or second week of September last year. So this is, a little bit after the 1 year anniversary of my first show. But I did the Kelly Clarkson show, that first episode. And look, other than that, I haven't watched any more of the Kelly Clarkson show. I don't have time, to be honest, to watch daytime talk shows. I watch way too many other things. But I like to think I know a thing or two about daytime talk shows, because I used to watch them all the time when I was a kid. I mean, first of all, we didn't have cable, so for most of my childhood, we had cable for like 2 years, but for most of my childhood, we only had like 6 channels, and there were a lot of talk shows on back then. I mean, that's when Gabrielle Kateris from 90210 had her own talk show, and Tempest Bledsoe, Vanessa from The Cosby Show had a talk show, and of course, you have your mainstays, Ricky Lake, Montel, Oprah, Sally Jesse, so look, I know it and I've seen it. But of course, the ones now are a lot more, there's the informative ones like Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil, but then there's the more entertainment-based ones that, like, kind of Rosie O'Donnell started in the daytime game, that Ellen has, of course, carried the torch for, and everybody since has been trying to do that. Harry Connick Jr., the Tony Danza show, this, Steve Harvey show kind of drew the line a little bit between the two. But Kelly Clarkson obviously falls into that category, and Drew Barrymore does as well. This is a very, like, entertainment-based show, celebrity guests, human interest stories, that kind of thing. So I watched the first 2 of these to give her the old college try. And so the first episode, it was her old buddies from Charlie's Angels. And there was like an Adam Sandler thing, because of course they've done all those movies together, but that was online. It wasn't actually a part of the broadcast show. She was like, hey, we want to do some cool stuff online too that you can only see online, so go to drewbarrymoreshow.com for all the exclusive Adam Sandler stuff. And I watched it, and it was cute. They sort of reenacted the 51st Date song at the end when he sings to her, and like, or when he does the video and reminds her like of what, how many days she's been in the coma, and her memory loss, and all that kind of stuff, whatever. It was cute. And then the second episode was Reese Witherspoon, which I didn't realize they were friends, but they go back, they met when Reese was like 14, so, they go back a long, long time, and, they talk a lot about their feminist, companies, and how, working women, and this and that. It's a very female heavy audience, I think, is what they're hoping for with the show, because it's all like the Charlie's Angels crew. When they were on, they were talking a lot about motherhood, and Drew being married and divorced, and all that kind of stuff. Not that can't appeal to men, but I think there's a lot of like female empowerment in these first 2 episodes. But then there's also segments like Drew's News, where she does some human interest stories, and she meets people that have done something interesting. There's this kid in, I'm not sure what country he's from, one of the African countries, I think, like a third world country, and he loves crocheting, and so he's done a lot of crocheting, and made a sort of a little business out of it, and did a book about it, and so, he's going to be like a special correspondent in the future. And the guy she had on the first episode had like a food pantry, so he started that during COVID for all the people that were needing stuff. So anyway, a lot of that kind of stuff, human interest stuff. But it's interesting to see a show start during COVID, because obviously when it was announced a year ago or whatever that she was going to have this talk show, I remember breaking the news in like the fall of last year. So it's been since long before COVID. I can't imagine, she thought her first show would have a wall of virtual people over, I guess, Zoom or whatever, that she could talk to, a little bit between segments, and everybody sort of sitting 6 feet apart. And Cameron Diaz wasn't even there. She was a hologram. It looked like she was there. It was freaking really great technology. At the end of the interview, or well, before they go to the first commercial, in the interview, she's like, one of us isn't actually here right now. Can you even guess? And it was Cameron Diaz, and I was like, wow, like she looked like she was in that studio. I never would have known if they didn't say it. But so that was interesting. But other than like it covers all the basics of a daytime talk show geared towards mainly females, I would say. Drew Barrymore is just not a good host yet. Maybe she will be. Kelly Clarkson was a much more natural host off the bat. Drew is very bubbly. She's Drew. But like she does like these heartfelt things, and my guess is it's not an act. My guess is it's the real Drew, but it comes off very sappy and very like over the top emotional. Like her voice gets real soft, and like it was actually quite annoying. But look, I love Drew Barrymore as an actress, as a person, as a role model. Really, I mean, she obviously had so many drug issues back in the day, and in the 90s she really cleaned herself up and cleaned her act up, and has been a role model, I think, for everybody, not just girls, but for like 25 years. So I like her as a person, and I think her interviews have been really good so far. However, they've all been with friends. So how is she going to be when she's not with a friend? I'm not sure. But I will say the couple of people she interviewed in the human interest portion, I thought she did pretty well there too. So maybe she will be all right with the interview portion. That, I think, is the strength of the show thus far, because it's not her sort of going off the cuff. It's not her being emotional. And it is live to tape because she flubs several things and just keeps going, And in the first episode, she mentions a couple times, like, hey, don't forget this is live. So that's kind of cute, And look, the thing about Drew is that's it. She's cute, She's bubbly and adorable, and everybody loves her for that. But boy, she's got a lot of work to do, I think, to really even go up to the level of a Kelly Clarkson. Like I think the Kelly Clarkson show was pretty solid off the bat, But one thing Drew has is connections, and so she'll have a lot of famous people on. But the other thing I love about Drew that I think other people don't necessarily have, Ellen certainly does, I guess, but is we know very much about Drew's personal life, and she has already dragged a lot of it out on the show. She's talked about her divorces already. She's talked about her substance abuse problems already. So that's great. I really appreciate that, because the one thing, like the Queen Latifah show, I could never connect with that because it's fairly widely known that Queen Latifah is a lesbian, and she's never come out publicly and said it. So if she's not being her true self on the show, how can I expect her to be real with the guests? You know what I mean? Whereas Drew and like Lucy Liu were just getting into it about their divorce, her divorce and all this kind of stuff, and how she felt when she was pregnant with Olive and whatever. So anyway, I've prattled on probably way too long. I think this might be my longest review of the 6 is the Drew Barrymore show, believe it or not. But I think she's got a long way to go. I think it's got some potential, but she definitely needs to tighten it up. And the emotional bits, she just needs to not go into like the soft-spoken Drew mode. It was a real turnoff. But I usually grade new talk shows on a little bit of a curve because I think nobody's going to hit it right out of the park right away. And I do think her interviewing style is great. And, it ticks all the boxes, I guess, that you would want to watch. But I think I would much rather watch the Kelly Clarkson Show over this. But I'll leave it with a B minus. I kind of teetered on that C plus. But Drew is likable enough to just get it across there, so I'm going to leave it a B minus. Okay, that's it. We've gone over an hour. I didn't want to do that, but I told you we had a lot of ground to cover. So next week we've got more new shows. Hopefully the news won't be quite as long. It probably won't be because no Emmys, next week. We talked a lot about the Emmys today. But thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe below. Like, comment too. I love hearing from you guys on the comments. So do me the honor of that, please. And we'll see you soon for another episode of TV News and Reviews. Thanks for watching. Bye.